Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Trust and Believe. Today, I'm really excited to talk to you because I think a lot of times we talk about things that aren't really that great, and we talk a lot about struggle, but we never talk about happiness and the things you can do to continue to be happy. I did a little research before this podcast because while my life experience, I think, is valid, just like your life experience is very valid. I also believe that sometimes I need to go a little bit deeper into what I'm talking about just to get some background information to make sure that I'm on the right track, especially for you, because I want you to succeed in whatever it is that you want to do, especially in terms of your happiness. Now, what's really important today about happiness is not, I'm not necessarily talking about smiling and cheesing and hiding, what's really going on in your life. What I really want to talk about today is how present are you in every moment of your life and how that can aid in your happiness and how that can benefit in your overall happiness. Now, it's really important, and you'll hear what I talk about. It's not about, again, smiling or, being super jovial all the time. It's also a little bit about the trials and tribulations you go through and how, if in that moment you are present, you have a better chance on being happier after that moment. So sit back, get ready to trust and believe and be in the power of now.
Somebody say hell yeah!
What's up?
He's better than Oprah. Come on, y'all.
This is Shaun T, and it's time to trust and believe. All right, I am back, and you're going to see my eyes peer this way a little bit because I think it's very important that what I say to you is very specific. But the first thing I want to touch on, and it is actually a question, is how much on a scale of 1 to 10 do you feel you live in the present moment? How much do you feel like you live in the present moment? For instance, just to kind of give you something to think about as you think about that answer, again, on a scale of 1 to 10. If you are driving to work, are you thinking about where you are? Are you paying attention to the road? Or are you thinking about what you're going to have dinner later that night? Are you thinking about the project that you have coming up in 3 weeks? Or are you really focused on what you're doing at this very moment? Are you focused on the situation that's happening right now in your relationship? Or are you focused on, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is going to work out? Are you focused on what happened last week, or are you focused on what's going on right now? Which brings me to my main point of today and why this subject was so important to me. Obviously, last week, or however long ago, whenever you listen to that particular podcast about my crash on the water, during the week after, I kept thinking about what if that would have happened? What if I would have turned the wrong way? What if the gas station was open? Then I would have never gotten into that crash, right? And what I realized that I've done since the accident is some really, really great internal learning for myself. And I learned to live in the moment as much as possible. One of the most powerful things that has happened since the accident is my fear of death diminished greatly. I'm not saying I'm completely over that fear. And for those of you who have heard me speak live before, I've spoken about that pretty often, but my fear of death has definitely decreased, if you will. And I know for a fact now it's because I'm so focused on what's happening in this moment. If I'm hugging my kids, I'm focused on hugging my kids. If I'm talking to Scott, if I'm enjoying a nice dinner, if I'm having a glass of wine, if I'm laughing with my in-laws, if I'm recording this podcast, I'm so focused now on what I'm doing at this moment and enjoying the moment and enjoying life. Whereas before, yes, I was happy. Yes, I was in the moment a lot of times, but there were a lot of times where as a parent, I would be like, oh my gosh, am I doing the best I can do? What if I die? And I know that sounds really wild and crazy to a lot of people, but once I had kids, my fear of death increased dramatically. And it's always been something that's been, a big fear of mine. I think just fear of the unknown. Also, just to bring up, even prior to necessarily focusing on my fear of death when I was younger, a lot of my stress and negative moments came from me thinking about my past and thinking about my sexual abuse, or thinking about, when I wasn't out as a gay man, and the past thoughts would affect the current thought that I was in, or affect the current moments that I was in. And again, ever since the boat accident, when I really started to focus on the present moment, it's helped me in a lot of ways. It's helped me communicate better. It's helped me sleep better. And I've had less angst moments about having to manage my annoyance with things. Now I'm just like, this is what it is. Like, be action oriented, and how are you going to figure this out, instead of worrying about what's going to happen or what has happened. And so I want to read this thing to you right now that I looked up that I think is just really cool. And there was a study that was done, I believe it was a researcher out of Harvard. And I'm going to be full disclosure. This research was done, I think, with people that have smartphones. And the reason why I liked this study is because I think a lot of you out there, myself included, we use smartphones daily. So it was actually reaching out to people or getting results from people who I think align with us. A lot of studies are done in person or some kind of controlled study, but this study was done for people with smartphones, and I think it's interesting. So just hear me out. People are happier when living in the present moment. At least that's what a former Harvard researcher, Matt Killingsworth, believes. As a long-term meditator and expert on human behavior, the person who wrote this article said they have to agree, but I'm going to say, not as a meditator, but as a person who believes in human behavior, and that was one of my favorite classes in college. It was such an amazing class. I actually have to agree with what I read as well. Now, granted, the present may not always be pleasant, but his data shows that even if the activity you're participating in is not so fun, i.e. sitting in traffic or something like that, people tend to be happier when focused on the here and now, in contrast to when they focus on other things, like when their mind wanders. Also continued on, he makes a point that, as Mr. Killingsworth noted in his 2011 TED Talk, and I'm going to try to put that link in the article below, mind wandering is likely a cause and not merely a consequence of unhappiness. I'm going to say that again. Mind wandering is likely a cause and not merely a consequence of unhappiness. How many of you out there, your mind just wanders and wanders and wanders, and you find yourself in a completely different state, a completely different area than where you are at this moment, a completely different mood when your mind finishes wandering? So just to bring light to that, that's definitely happened to me before. His research aggregated data from 15,000 people across 80 countries of various ages and income levels. His study suggests that mind wandering has a more significant effect on happiness than any other factors like income, education, gender, and marital status. One particularly interesting data point found that on average, people's minds wander, are you ready for this? 47% of the time. Almost 50% of the time that we're living and breathing and maybe, in a movie or dancing or at a party, our mind is wandering. I want you to think about that. And before I continue, think about times where you've actually gone down a road of mind wandering, or think about how often you do it every day. A tip and an assignment is to be very present throughout the week and how much you actually do mind wandering. So anyway, just to reiterate, that means for the average person, we're somewhere else, spacing out at least a little bit for about half of our waking hours. Isn't that wild? Isn't that crazy? Half of our waking hours are spent literally wandering and thinking about something else. And so moving on, like most research studies, there are some limitations to the conclusions that can be drawn. Killingsworth, who is now a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation health scholar, compiled his data from an iPhone app he created during his doctoral work called Track Your Happiness. And that's what I was talking about before. He actually studied people like us who are using a smartphone and apps. So I just wanted to make that clear so that if you find yourself wandering, most likely you're not in the present moment. And because you're wandering, you're unable to attach to things that are happening at this moment. The point being, and I want you to think about this, if you focus more of your time on what's happening right now, imagine how proactive you could be in the problems that arise in your life, or how happier you can be just in general. If it's a moment where you should be happy, or if you're cooking dinner, how much better your food will taste if your mind wasn't wandering to other things. Now, my goal is to drop that from 47% to maybe 37%. Right? Take an active approach on dropping that maybe 10% of the time each and every day, so that, you can start to work on it and practice it. Some of the things that, I come up with really interesting analogies, hopefully to help you, make this all relevant. And this may be funny, but you remember the song, or maybe you know the song, Don't Worry, Be Happy, and then the whistle come and right? That song, while it sounded good and it felt good, how many of us went beyond singing that song and actually put the direction into action, right? The direction was, don't worry, be happy. And again, it's not to say that you have to focus on just like being happy, but don't worry. I think that's the most important part of that song, is stop worrying and wandering and focus on what you can do right now. It's extremely hard to do, I know. Trust me, days after my boat accident, I had a very tough time honing in and having tunnel vision on what my happiness could be, but I was able to do it by continuously practicing it. India Arie has a song where she says, in the face of the unexpected, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I want to live. Again, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. But right now, how can you live your best life? And I know we hear live your best life often, but how can we live our best life by not worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow and be in the present and being right now? Some things to focus on as you start to try and keep your mind from wandering those 47% of the time. Stop procrastinating. Can you imagine what would happen if you stopped letting your mind wander? One of the things that would happen is you would stop procrastinating. Now, there might be some people out there who are like, I'm not a procrastinator. I tend to think that a lot of us procrastinate quite often. I didn't do research on, a study to say how many people actually procrastinate. But if you do take a survey of your day, you're like, something silly, like, well, I have to go to the bathroom. Well, I'll go in a little bit. Right? That happens to me in the middle of the night. I'm like, I don't want to go. And then I just have a miserable 15 minutes and I'm like, I might as well just get up and go. Right? So what happens if, I use a silly analogy, but what happens if you stop procrastinating? If you I don't have it here, but I didn't have it in my notes, but it came to my mind, which is, what if I just worked out right now? The reason why you procrastinate, or procrastination, proves that you already had time, right? If you can't procrastinate if you don't have time. So if you're telling me you actually have time to work out and you stop procrastinating, then you can do it. And the reason why we procrastinate is because our mind wanders. I think it has less to do with laziness and more of our mind wandering, instead of saying, let me hone in on the focus of actually working out at the time that I said I was going to work out. Not thinking about, again, oh my gosh, I'm hungry, or this workout's going to be too hard, or this workout's going to be too easy, or instead of saying this is going to be, just say, I'm going to do this. And then switch it even further. Say, I'm doing this now, so you can eliminate the procrastination. The next thing is, if you keep your mind from wandering, that actually enables you to work to your full potential. Imagine that. If we are able to leave out all the extra things and focus right here, we can actually work to our full potential. Even as I'm doing this podcast, I see my mind going, oh my gosh, like I only have 10 minutes because my father-in-law has to use the room, so he can shower. And I have to tell myself to go away from there. And the way I'm going to have a great podcast right now is I actually execute the verbiage that I want you to know so that you can be inspired. And that's just a really transparent moment of what's happening in my head right now. I have to say, no, like, what is it that I want to accomplish right here? And if I can accomplish that, I'll work to my full potential. The other thing that I think is really great, is if you stop your mind from wandering, you are able to communicate at the highest level. Now you don't have all these other voices in and out of your head saying, well, what about this and what about that? And it's more focused on, this is how I feel. This is how I want to execute what I want to say. This is how I want my message to be perceived. This is what I want my intentions to be. And this is how I can respond when someone responds back to my communication. And if you're really in the moment, you can communicate at your fullest potential. And then the other thing is, you can live a fuller life. You can live a fuller life if you eliminate the wandering, because life is so beautiful. And I know we're having a lot of issues in here, and even the study suggests that not everything's going to be, sunshine and roses. But if we really focus on the here and now, we can feel so great about who we are, and we can really achieve more moments of happiness. And in closing, I want to say, again, not every moment is going to be happy. Not every moment is going to be sad. Most moments will be pretty average, and moments of you just doing the best that you can do and getting things done and executing tasks. And that's really great. But the more you focus on the here and now, the less outside noise from other people and outside noise that you generate in your own mind, the less that comes into play, the more you'll be able to focus on what it is that you want to do, execute your goals, achieve your goals, be present in the moment, and that can lead to a happier, more fulfilled life. And the thing that's really great about it is it's tangible. Happiness and accomplishments, by not letting your mind wander, are immediately tangible results. You feel them right away. You feel sadness right away. You feel the struggle right away. But you'll also be able to react to the sadness, to react to the struggle by staying in the here and now, eventually leading to a fuller life in this moment. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. I hope that you find ways to be happier. My challenge to you is just to lessen the wandering time 1 or 2% per day until you're doing the best that you can do. And hopefully you find joy in your heart and you can share it with other people. And always trust and believe in who you are.